We're back to a full schedule in the NAIA here mid-season, and it's about time that the KCAC and the Hart conferences got back to work. They took the little bit of an intermission, so more than 40 games on the schedule this past weekend, week 7, and I think we had a pretty good time all the way around. There were some good games and a number of blowouts, including 7 shutouts this week through the 40-plus games we had on the docket. So we're going to talk about the top 5 performances in the NAIA for week 7. And before we do that, we're going to go beyond the 5. We'll talk about a good number of the games and some of the things that happened. Also, I wanted to say, please let us know from where you're watching tonight on this live stream. It's a little bit different time as we are here on a Monday instead of a Sunday. It was a fun weekend. I had the opportunity to go to St. Joseph, Missouri, and do some play-by-play for the Griffins as Missouri Western took on Northwest Missouri State. And I hope I still have a voice left, so we'll get through this tonight. But we were not able to get back in time for the live stream last night, so we're doing it tonight. And we got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. We'll talk a little bit more about the week and the schedule here on Midwest Sportsnet. In the meantime, going beyond the 5, Reinhardt 57, St. Andrews nothing. Really no surprise there. I don't know that we're going to pick against Reinhardt the rest of the season. We'll see how it works out. I think maybe until... well, we may not pick against Reinhardt the rest of the season. Hey, thanks for watching from Clio Springs, Oklahoma. Wow. And, I'm based here in Oklahoma. I'm not even sure I know where that is. You have to let me know where that is. But thanks for watching tonight, Lisa. I appreciate that. 57-0 Reinhardt over St. Andrews. The defense held the Knights to 88 yards of total offense on the game. Colby Sloan had 6 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 fumble recoveries over the course of the day for the Eagles. Reinhardt coming away with a big victory, one of those 7 shutouts we were talking about. St. Francis, Indiana, 56. Lawrence Tech, just 7. St. Francis scored the first 56 points to open the game. Avante Vickers in his new home with 3 receptions for 100 yards receiving, 2 receiving touchdowns on the day. And we're going to go ahead and try the tough drop because I think from the broadcast this weekend, I'm still dealing with that. Vickers, though, with 2 receiving touchdowns, and Elisa, 30 miles west of Enid. Well, that's cool. I've called a number of Great American Conference baseball games in Enid, but I've never gone 30 miles past, so I appreciate you being on the show with us tonight. Marion 14, Concordia 7. This was a big contest, and Marion remains undefeated now on the year, and Concordia picking up its first loss, 14-7. Keegan LaBelle, 15 carries, 126 rushing yards. The 1 rushing touchdown, his was the second of the game, and it proved to be the game winner overall. Question there, Jake. Glad you're watching, and I'm guessing from East Wichita tonight. Were there any big upsets this weekend? You know what? I don't think so. I really don't. I think that most everything held true pretty much to what it was. Now, we'll talk about a few. I think the thing was there were so many games that were just – there was such a disparity. And I think that's not going to be the same next weekend. Now, I realize, and I think I know where you're headed with that comment, Jake, but I don't think it's an upset. So let's just put that out there. Just letting you know, Jake, I don't think it's an upset. We'll talk about that when we get to the Friends Falcons a little bit later on. That's just between you and me. Anyway, Indiana Wesleyan, 26, Madonna, nothing. Another one of those shutouts, and that is by no stretch an upset right there. Dadarian Williams, 23 carries, 227 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Williams is averaging 143.9 rushing yards per game. That's good enough for 3rd in the NAI. Xander Stokes, 19 for 37 passing, 243 passing yards. He didn't have a touchdown in this one, and that was I think, a pretty big deal. He had 2 interceptions. Williams went ahead and took care of business for the Wildcats. Levi Tidwell, 10 receptions, 175 yards. I think all that Tidwell does is just set more records for Indiana Wesleyan. Tony watching tonight from Indianapolis. That's where I got that in Indianapolis, Florida. That one is a new one as well. Now, I'm not based in Florida, but that one is a new one as well. And giving a shout out to the Bethel Wildcats tonight. Why not? You know what? Interestingly enough, that's the next score on there. Bethel, 44, Roosevelt, nothing. And that was a good intersectional matchup. And we looked at this at the start of the season and thought, this could be pretty interesting. The Wildcats said no. It's not going to be that interesting. Bethel took care of business. Joaquin Collazo, the third, 23 for 35 passing, 367 passing yards on the day, 3 touchdowns, had the 1 interception, 8 carries for 7 yards, so obviously a little bit less than 1 yard per carry, but he still had a touchdown. So a big gain for Collazo in that one. J.D. Dixon, 7 catches, 150 yards receiving, 2 receiving touchdowns, and Avant Burris, 8 receptions, 141 yards receiving, and 1 receiving touchdown as well. And by the way, have to tell you, Tony, that Joaquin is doing a fantastic job. Collazo just continues to lead this team well. The Wildcats have put themselves in such a good position. I know the 1 loss on the season, but this is a team maybe getting the loss out of the way during the regular season now may make a difference for this team heading into the playoffs. Anyway, I think they're a team that you're going to be watching and talking about well into the month of November. St. Francis, Illinois, 56, Judson, 26. Carl Bew, the freshman, is in for Tumulty. He's 10 of 12 passing for 155 passing yards, but he had more rushing yards, 27 carries, 170 yards on the ground. He had 1 passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns, and the Fighting Saints fight their way to a 30-point victory. Meanwhile, for Judson, Aiden Edwards, pretty solid day, 20 of 30 passing, 222 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Grant Alexander, 9 catches for 157 yards and 2 of those receiving touchdowns. It was Georgetown 42, Cumberland 14. Georgetown scored the first 35 points. Dylan Warren, 4 catches for 52 yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Also had a 73-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. And don't forget about Chad Holleran. I know we don't mention the defensive players as well as we should. We'll get him in here. 10 tackles, 3.5 tackles for a loss. Lindsey Wilson, 35, Campbellsville, 14. Big win for the Blue Raiders. But before we get to the main source of the offense for Lindsey Wilson, let's talk about Campbellsville for just a moment. Jagger Gillis continuing to shine in that QB spot, 25 of 45 passing, 319 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, no interceptions on the day, 295.4 passing yards per game. That's good enough for third in the NAIA. Luke Shepperson had 5 of those catches for 108 yards, and 2, both of those touchdowns went to him. Ellis Reed on the day, 15 tackles. It's quite a bit, but still not quite enough to get it done. Lindsey Wilson was led by Jabias Dawson, who continues to run the ball quite well. 29 carries, 201 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns, 119 yards per game. That's good enough for 5th in the NAIA. Siena Heights over Taylor, 24-21. Taylor stays in this one, and it wound up going the full 60 minutes. Ethan Lepresto with 21 carries for 184 yards on the ground for Siena Heights, 2 rushing touchdowns, and it was David Medvedik who had the game-winning 31-yard field goal, no time left. Siena Heights comes away with a 3-point victory. Medvedik, and we're going to talk about the kickers here throughout our Beyond the Five, 3 for 3 on point after, 1 for 1 the field goal. He had 6 points on the day, but he had the most important points at the end. William Penn, 41, Clark, 20. Destin Loring, 19 carries for 159 yards for the Statesman and 2 rushing touchdowns. Clark, 6 for 167, 1 receiving touchdown on the day. Dordt, 25. Jamestown, 13. Stephen Linen. How about another kicker? Matter of fact, tell you what, we're just going to talk about kickers in this one. That's all we're going to talk about. Dordt, 25. Jamestown, 13. For the defenders, Stephen Linen, 3 for 3 field goals of 45, 41, and 23, 2 for 2 on extra point attempts. He had 11 points on the day. Jamestown, Anon Peterson, 2 for 2 field goals from 36 and 20 yards out, 1 for 1 point after attempts. He had 7 points on the day. So of the 38 points scored, these 2 guys accounted for 18. That's nearly half. And they're the kickers. So that was the score right there. Dordt gets back on the winning track with a 12-point victory over the Jimmies. Benedictine, 59. Central Methodist 21. Ravens continue to roll. Jackson Dooley 12 for 17 passing for an even 200 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. And that was a pick 6, by the way. Omarion Slaw for Central Methodist. So actually Dooley threw 5 touchdown passes, just 4 to, folks in his color jersey. Sean Wara, 12 carries, 142 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns for Benedictine. Jacob Gathright, 7 catches, 162 yards receiving, 3 receiving touchdowns. He has 8 now on the season for Benedictine, and the Ravens pick up another win. Concordia 44, Hastings 21. Bulldogs get back in the win column behind DJ McGarvey, who was 20 for 31 passing, about 332 yards through the air, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. Austin Jablonski, 11 catches for 162 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. For Hastings, Carson Kudlacek, 30 of 50 passing, 368 yards through the air, 3 passing touchdowns. He had 1 interception as well. And Ethan Wilburn caught 8 of those passes for 161 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns on the day, but too much Concordia in this one. Baker 40, Mid-America Nazarene 7. So we get into Hart divisional play now, and the Wildcats are starting to assert themselves. Big win over the Pioneers here. Mid-America Nazarene scored its 7 points, and then Baker scored 40 straight following that. Truman Julesgaard, we've talked about him a number of times here on the program, 15 of 31 passing for 161 yards. Did not have a passing touchdown. He did, however, have a rushing touchdown and more rushing yards. 20 carries, 167 rushing yards. Baker also was led by Seth Simpson, 4 for 4. How about the field goals again? 35, 25, 31, 27. He also was 4 for 4 in extra point attempts. 16 points on the day just from Simpson, who's the kicker. And lest we forget Baker's defense, led by Cannon Karn, 14 tackles, 1 interception, and a fumble recovery that wound up being a 3-yard scoop and score. Didn't have to scoop and scoot along too far to get that one, just 3 yards out. So Baker with another win, 40-7 over Mid-America Nazarene. We continue to go beyond the 5 right now here on this special Monday edition of our top 5 performances. And yes, I'm taking care of this cough drop big time. The voice over the weekend just about spent, so I want to make sure that we have enough to talk about the top 5. So I appreciate you bearing with me in that. Please let me know from where you're watching, because we've had Clio Springs and Indy Atlantic, and those are both places I have never talked about before. So I'm really excited to have those on there. East Wichita I've talked about before. We'll get to Jake's favorite team here in just a moment. But I have to tell you, Jake, it's near the end of the broadcast, so you should know what that means. So when we start talking a little bit more, not just beyond the 5. But while we're still beyond the 5, Morningside wins its 74th consecutive regular season game. Is anyone surprised by this? I would think not. Now, the folks in Dakota Wesleyan are saying, hey, look, we held this team to less than 30 points. It's been a long time since that's happened in the regular season, and it absolutely has. The Tigers get only 3 on the board, and Jamin Aaron with 31 carries, 131 rushing yards. He's now second all-time in Dakota Wesleyan history, 3,366 career rushing yards. He had 2 catches for 31 yards yesterday, too. Still not enough. Dakota Wesleyan 0 for 6 on 4th down. They went for it on 4th down twice as many times as they punted. Just 3 punts on the day, 0 for 6 on 4th down. The Morningside defense just bowed up and said, no, we're not going to go any further on this one. Morningside led this time by Lennox Brown. It's back and forth between the passing quarterback and the rushing quarterback. Saturday, it was the rushing quarterback. 3 for 3 through the air, completed all his passes for a grand total of 7 yards passing. Didn't need it. It was okay. 17 carries, had 122 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. Ryan Cole, nice to mention his name again, 18 carries for 94 yards on the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns. Zach Norton had 4 receptions. I know you're saying, but Lennox Brown threw only 3 passes. Well, they shared the wealth in that quarterback position. 4 catches, 42 yards. Did not need the air game, did Morningside on Saturday. They get things taken care of on the turf. Ottawa, 28, St. Mary's 17. Winton Ruth, 21 carries for 162 rushing yards and a TD. Malachi Peko, 13 carries, 130 rushing yards and a TD. The Braves have two 100-yard rushers on the day. Dickinson State continues to roll. Of course, it's North Star play, so they're looking to win the North Star League title for, I don't know, the 73rd time in a row, something like that. We'll check the numbers on that and see if that's right. Dickinson State 42, Mayville State 17. Braden Zuroff, 12 carries, 111 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns, had 5 catches for 39 yards as well. Darian Brown, 9 carries, 92 yards rushing, and 3 more rushing touchdowns. Evangel still undefeated. I have Evangel in the top 10. And by the way, I know that the folks over at NAIA F-Ball are going to be on the air here in just a little bit. The new poll coming out. My vote has Evangel in the top 10. RJ Wakely, 19 for 37 passing, 337 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, as the Valor defeat Bethany 34-11. By the way, Wakely had 9 carries for 40 yards and a rushing touchdown as well. Big game on the horizon next week. There are a number of huge games next Saturday in Week 8. And one of them is Evangel hosting Friends. Big game coming up. Texas Wesleyan 51. Sagu, this many. That was a surprise. A shutout of Southwestern Assemblies of God. That was in Waxahachie. So I'm pretty sure Adam wasn't having a fun time on the call right there. Jay Reed for Texas Wesleyan blocked a punt that was recovered for a touchdown. That was the first score, and after that, the route was on. Oh, by the way, Reed also had a 45-yard fumble return for a scoop and score to close out the scoring as well. Probably should have been in our top 5. He had 2 defensive scores. I think the rule is that if you get at least 2 pick sixes, you'll be in the top 5. And that rule was implemented this weekend as well. So we'll get to that in a moment. Jay Reed probably should have been in that top 5 with those 2 defensive touchdowns. Ashton Mitchell, by the way, 26 carries for 100 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. A.J. Bob. I've been telling you about A.J. Bob. I'm going to continue to tell you about A.J. Bob. 3 catches for 78 yards, including 1 touchdown. And really, the Rams didn't need a whole lot from him over the course of the day. 51 points in the win, a 51-point margin. Bob, by the way, 116 receiving yards per game. That is tops in the NAIA. He had 2 punt returns, by the way, for a grand total of 40 yards. And don't forget about Garrett Blodgett. We've talked about kickers. Let's talk about Blodgett. Had another big day for the Rams. 3 for 3 field goals, 45, 42, 32 yards out. 4 for 4 extra point attempts, 13 points on the day for Blodgett. It was a big day for kickers. It really was. Lots of field goals attempted and made as well. Missouri Valley, 35. Missouri Baptist, 20. Jeremiah Bryant for the Vikings, 20 carries for 155 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Louisiana Christian. I've been talking about Louisiana Christian, and I want to remind you that I've been talking about Louisiana Christian, the Wildcats with another win, 52-7 over Texas College. The Wildcats on the second possession, first play of the second possession, Sammy Feaster, who is a back who can carry the ball, carried this one 83 yards for the touchdown. First play, second possession, game over. Louisiana Christian went on to just, the route was on at that point. And by the way, that was Feaster's only run of the game. They just needed him one time. He picked up 83 yards. They didn't give him the ball again. We'll see what happens next week, because next week, another one of those big games. Louisiana Christian travels to Surprise, Arizona to take on the Spirit, Ottawa Spirit in that one. I know we're going to talk about this a lot more on Thursday night, so you need to be ready for the live stream on Thursday night. Tune in for that here on Midwest Sports Net, which, by the way, let me pause long enough to let my voice catch up and to say we enjoy talking about small college sports and more throughout the Midwest and beyond. If you have not yet subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate that. And please continue to enjoy the videos right here on Midwest Sports Net. Montana Western 20, Rocky Mountain, or I'll say that again. Montana Western 27, Rocky Mountain 20. Western led by Pete Gibson, who had 5 carries for 125 yards and a rushing touchdown. 5 carries for 125 yards. That is an even 25 yards per carry. And when you do the math that quickly in those round numbers, it just makes it so easy. I do like the mathematical challenges, but I have to tell you, 5 for 125, that one's an easy one. Everyone can figure that one out. And that says you just flat got it done with the ball. Pete Gibson, the 1 rushing touchdown. Now, to Rocky Mountain's credit, there were 2 Graydon Buell to Joseph Dwyer touchdown passes in the fourth quarter, but just too little too late. Passes of 31 and 24 yards. Buell, 26 for 39 passing on the day, 310 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception he gave up. And Dwyer, another solid day. Joseph Dwyer has continued to do well for the Battling Bears. He had 4 catches for 97 yards, including those 2 touchdown receptions in the fourth quarter, but the Bulldogs come away with a big win. I've had the Bulldogs in the top 25 for a while, and they continue to be in the top 25. I may have jumped past Louisiana Christian too quickly. Louisiana Christian is a strong team continuing to be undefeated. Just saying. Maybe I'm reminding too much on that one. I don't know. Maybe I just needed a video clip to look back on in the future. Union 20, Point 13, and Union had Noah Steen with 12 tackles in the game, 1.5 tackles for loss. One of those was a sack, but a 51-yard pick six that proved to be the game winner in the second half. Noah Steen with the winner for the Bulldogs. Carroll, 14, Eastern Oregon, 6. Not a lot of scoring going on in the Frontier Conference, at least not in this one. Jack Perka was just 6 for 16 passing for 43 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. He did have 7 carries, but for only 10 yards there. That included, though, a 1-yard touchdown run with 11:18 left, and that's the game winner. Next possession, a fumble recovery. It definitely proved to be the game winner because the Saints got the ball back right after that. Forrest Suero in the end zone to recover that one, and the Saints go on for the 8-point victory. Southern Oregon making some noise in a big way over the Firestorm, 49-7 over Arizona Christian. Southern Oregon led by Avery McQuaig, 7 carries for 94 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had 3 catches for 35 yards on the day. It was Waldorf 34, Dakota State 14, Chatovier Hill continuing to shine. 14 carries for 155 yards rushing. And let's mention Tay Buchanan along the way. 15 carries, 84 yards rushing. The Warriors getting it done on the ground. 1 rushing touchdown for Buchanan as well. Cumberland's 37, Faulkner 7. Darius James, day at the office once again for Cumberland's 26 carries, 127 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Just getting it done does James. Kaiser, 69. Warner, not even close. Jaden Meisinger, by the way, was 69-6. Jaden Meisinger, they just needed him for 5 carries. He picked up a grand total of 18 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns all along the way. Wendell Philord, who got the game started, 7 tackles on the game, but he opened it up with an 82-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Kaiser all over Warner in this one. Pikeville, 49. Kentucky Christian, nothing. The Knights have been shut out. Well, another time here. Kirkland, Lee Kirkland, he's been in our top 5 the last 2 weeks. Not today, but still a strong afternoon. 18 for 31 passing for 186 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, gave up an interception as well. Bethel gets a big win, and this is a big, big win over McPherson. 33-24. The Threshers over the Bulldogs. And the 2 headliners in this one both have 310 beside their name. Tristan Zabo, the quarterback for McPherson, solid afternoon, 33 for 57 passing, 310 yards passing. There's his 310. 3 passing touchdowns, but gave up 2 interceptions as well. For Bethel, DJ Sears, his 310 was split up just a little bit. 12 for 17 passing for 158 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. Also, 26 carries for 152 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. By the way, 158 and 152, that's 310. So there's his 310. Turnovers big for McPherson. Actually, both teams had turnovers. Bethel gave up 2. McPherson gave up 4, and likely proved the difference. Jairo Castillo, a 68-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown for the Bethel Threshers on the day. Another one of those defensive touchdowns. We like talking about those when we can. Two more before we get to the top five, and we go to the GPAC for both of these. Northwestern, 37. Briar Cliff, 8. Northwestern with 517 yards of total offense on the day, led by Jalen Gramstead, 16 for 24 passing, 330 yards through the air, 1 passing touchdown, no interceptions. By the way, Gramstead, he's slowly moving up there in the passing totals. 287.4 yards passing per game, 5th in the NAIA. And he had a rushing touchdown as well. Excuse me, 8 carries for 40 yards and that rushing TD. Gramstead, we saw, can not only throw the ball, but he can run the ball. But it's been a lot more of the aerial game from Gramstead this year. And I think it's something to be noted and to consider as we get closer to November and in the playoffs, not to forget about the fact that Gramstead can run the ball too if called upon. Now, he wasn't called upon in the win over the Chargers on Saturday. Part of the reason for that was Connor McQuillan. He was the leading rusher and the leading receiver on the day. 11 carries for 123 yards on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns, 5 receptions, 92 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. His 3 rushing touchdowns and 73, one of those was a 73-yard touchdown run, the longest in his career, and the 3 rushing touchdowns, the most in his career. He had 4 TDs on the day. Big day for Northwestern. They're still the number 1 team in the country. And I don't think there's anything that says otherwise. It's going to take something in the loss column to really change my mind. And I'm not sure about that. I mean, this is a top team. Mount Marty, 28, Midland, 21. Fun game to watch from one half to the other. Depends on whose side you were on. If you're a Warriors fan, you like the first half. 21 straight points to open the game. But then Mount Marty got a touchdown just before the half, really changed the momentum, and then went ahead and scored 21 more points. So 28 unanswered after Midland scored the first 21 points. And Mount Marty goes to 3-5 now in the year, stopping a 5-game losing streak. Ken Gay, and I want to talk about this too. We talked about quietly moving up the passing ranks. How about Ken Gay? 15 for 32 passing, 175 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns on the day, no interceptions. Very, very solid game for him. His 21 passing touchdowns, second in the NAIA, tied for second in the NAIA, behind only Cade Ross. So a solid day. The juniors quietly putting together a good season. So that is a look beyond the 5. So we'll reset here, kind of sort things out just a little bit. And let's see here. Get ready to put our top 5 out there. Ready for that graphic? Now, I know if Jake's still watching, he's stuck around long enough to see what I know he's waiting to see, and that's when we drop the top 5 for this week. How about that? Top 5 performers for this week. We'll sort this out. Peru State, led by Duke McClinton on defense. He had 7 tackles, and very importantly, he also had 2 pick sixes. And, you know, that really makes the difference. In a game that was a tough game. And by the way, Graceland, this is a Yellow Jackets team that is playing without the services of Cade Ross, playing without the services of Gerald Monroe, and a few others, by the way. And so it's been a bit of a challenge. And even with that, I mean, you have to give Coach Ross's team a lot of credit in playing with this Peru State team. 37-31 was the final. Keon Henry Brooks for the Bobcats, 11 carries for 111 yards, the game-winning 2-yard touchdown with 19 seconds left. This one was close, but you have to give a lot of credit to McClinton. Those 2 interceptions, those 2 pick sixes, that was a big deal. A 41-yard interception return for the touchdown in the second quarter, 42-yarder in the fourth quarter. McClinton in our top 5. And, of course, you know the rules. If you get more than 1 pick six in a contest, you're going to automatically be in our top 5. Ave Maria, 30. Weber International, 7 on homecoming. And it's the Brian Steinke show again. 37 carries. Third time this season he's had more than 30 carries. 247 yards rushing. Third time this season he's had more than 200 yards rushing. As a matter of fact, the minimum in those 3 games, 235. Steinke had 1 rushing touchdown, had 1 reception, by the way. It went for 51 yards and another touchdown. So Steinke with 12 points scored on the day. He has 181.0 yards rushing per game. That is tops in the NAIA. 8 rushing touchdowns on the season, 2 receiving touchdowns on the season. Amazing. And, he's done this in just 5 games. Now, Ave Maria is 4-2 on the year. So they played 6 games. He was not involved in the first game of the season. That, by the way, was a 21-19 loss in the season opener to Lawrence Tech. And you have to think, where would this Gyrenes team be if Steinke had been playing in the season opener? If he makes a difference in that game, does he make 2 points worth of a difference in that game? Do they win against Lawrence Tech? And then are they able to carry that momentum? They're likely 5-1 at this point, possibly even 6-1. Sun Conference is wide open. So the Gyrenes have that 905 total rushing yards through 5 games played on the year for Brian Steinke. So just throwing that one out there for you as well. Okay, let's see here. We'll move on along. College of Idaho. Yeah, let's go out west. College of Idaho. 59. Sorry, that was that cough drop. I was concerned I was going to lose it and just get all choked up. 59. Montana State Northern, nothing. There's another one of those shutouts, by the way, 59-0. Andy Peters, 14 for 25 passing, 246 passing yards on the day, 4 passing touchdowns, no picks. John Schofield continues to score points. He had 5 receptions for 135 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. And how about Caden Cobb? 2 catches for 32 yards, 1 receiving touchdown, 5 carries for 24 yards, no rushing touchdowns. But for the second consecutive week, he has a kickoff return for the touchdown. Back-to-back weeks, 90 yards on the kickoff return this week for Caden Cobb. Last week, it was 100 yards on the kickoff return. Absolutely incredible. Caden Cobb on back-to-back weeks with very, very much long-distance scores. OUAZ. Yeah, it really was. It was a blowout. It was just an absolute blowout. As a matter of fact, OUAZ did not even score in the fourth quarter. Called off the Dogs. That's okay, as the Spirit was up already 83-0. I'm going to read to you. This is a quote, by the way, from the OUAZ website. On the night, the Spirit, 5-1 overall and 4-1 in Sooner Athletic Conference play, set new school standards for points in a game and conference game with 83 points, largest margin of victory, 83 points, and most points in the third quarter, 38 points in the third quarter. By the way, they didn't score in the fourth quarter. They also tied the school mark for fewest points allowed, 0. Well, that's it's never going to be beaten, by the way. And the record book is still being examined for other marks surpassed. So just another big day on the docket for OUAZ. So let's mention Luke Giron, 18 for 21 passing, 282 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, no picks. 3 of those touchdowns went to Devicius Wilson, 4 catches, 3 of them for touchdowns, 101 yards receiving, absolutely. And Jordan Wilmore, 18 carries of his own, 210 yards rushing, 4 rushing touchdowns on the day. Again, OUAZ, 83, Arkansas Baptist, nothing. And this was one of those that I really thought, and I had to consider this, should this be in the way or in the top 5, because it was just such a blowout. And you want to give credit to the Buffaloes, but it just looked like they didn't show up. But there were just too many things that happened, and we have to throw these numbers out there. So Giron, Wilmore, and Wilson. And finally, we get to one of the big games. I think this one and the Marion Concordia game have to be the top 2 games of the weekend on week 7. And there are some big ones coming up in week 8. This was a big win. Friends, 35. Southwestern, 20. I know some have said this is an upset. And it probably is from the standpoint of the fact that Southwestern was undefeated at 6-1. Friends was 5-1. And as far as the rankings go, and even the NAIA F-ball rankings, and I know where I put Friends in the last few weeks in the rankings, still didn't make the top 25. And I've had Friends way up there. I guess you could say I've had Friends in high places. You don't have to say that, but you could say that. And I have had Friends in high places, and I've continued even in this week. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the NAIA F-ball media poll takes place and where Friends shows up in that. And I honestly have not looked yet at the NAIA rankings, not ratings for this week. So if you know where Friends is in the NAIA rankings, not ratings, you can let me know on that. But Friends, led by Cavante Baker, 4 for 4 passing. That's right. We know Friends is not a passing team. 4 for 4 as Baker completed all of his passes, 2 of them for touchdowns, 119 yards passing on the day. No interceptions. It was the best passing day of the year for Baker, but he wasn't done. Of course not. He had 22 carries for 122 yards on the ground, 2 rushing touchdowns. He has 16 rushing touchdowns on the year. We're just 7 games in, and he's close to 20 rushing touchdowns on the season. It is definitely number 1 in the NAIA right now. Now, I think it should be mentioned that we haven't seen probably all that we're going to see this year from Jalen Gramstad, but for what Baker is doing right now, and especially what he continues to do, and Friends on the year now continuing to just top the charts, 420 yards per game rushing, absolutely fantastic. Braden Howell, by the way, for Southwestern, you can't take away from what he did. 18 for 35 passing, 204 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, but gave up 2 interceptions as well. Friends got a 15-0, never trailed in this game. And so I want to submit to you this. It's an upset, but I didn't have it as an upset. I had these 2 teams even, and probably have Friends picked in a game that's playing in Wichita. So there we go. This story, by the way, from Jake. Jake says Cavante had a hunk of skin ripped off his hand between his fingers. My wife saw it after the game. She asked him, I heard he said, not as bad as losing, ma'am. Gotta love that story. Got to love that story. And I appreciate that from him too. So Baker continuing to have a stellar season. Thank you, Lisa. 25. Friends is 25th in the NAIA rankings, not ratings. So we'll find out where it is, and we'll talk about it live on Thursday night where they are on the NAIA F-ball poll. But I think it's again, I'll just say, if anything, it's a mild upset, Jake. But I don't think I would have had it as an upset. I think these 2 teams are too evenly matched. And I will also mention what I have. I hope I have coined this phrase. I don't know if I have. If you hear it anywhere else, then please look back and say, you know, it's that guy from Midwest Sportsnet. I need to give him credit for this. But the Harrison factor. And I have to give a lot of credit to the Harrison factor. Of course, Terry Harrison, the head coach at Friends, and I don't know if they continue rolling at this pace, the Falcons almost seem ahead of schedule in moving things along. Now I realize there's still lots more to this season. Big game next week on the road at Evangel. Still hasn't played Bethel, and so those are 2 big games. Still hasn't played McPherson either. I'm just saying, I really do think it's a big win. So I have Friends in high places. I'm going to stick with that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. 25th in the NAIA rankings, not ratings. All right. Well, thank you very much. Oh, by the way, Elisa, that's just a phrase I use all the time. That's Elisa, excuse me. That's a phrase I use all the time. That's nothing there on your comment on that. All right. I think that's it for the night. It is it for the night. Let me tell you a little bit about the week ahead of us then. And again, thanks to everybody for watching. Tomorrow on the show, not on this show, but tomorrow on the summit, we'll have that video loaded a little bit later on in the day, probably before noon. We have an opportunity to get to visit with the head men's basketball coach for Central Missouri. His Mules are preseason favorites in the MIAA this year. You know, we talk about sports here, mainly covering Division II and NAIA, and Adam Bohach, who is the new head coach at Central Missouri. We get to visit with him tomorrow. So don't forget, that's on the docket tomorrow. We have the live stream on Thursday night where we will preview week 8 in the NAIA and talk about all the games on the docket in the NAIA. So you want to tune in for that live stream, and it will be at 8 o'clock on Thursday night. Also, don't forget, we will be back to our regularly scheduled Sunday night show at 8 p.m. Central Time. I'm giving Central Times now here. Central Time, 8 p.m. to talk about the top 5 performances from Week 8, and there should be many, many, many good performances. I want to tell you, these games coming up in Week 8, there are 4 right off the top of my head that are huge, huge games, including the one we talked about just a little bit earlier, the Friends at Evangel game. That is a big, big game, and there are a lot more on the way. We'll talk about all of that on Thursday night, and then talk about what went on the weekend, and who knows what may happen between now and then. Thank you so much for watching tonight. It really does mean a lot to me. I enjoy getting to visit with you all in the comment section, and we have also we've made it to the YouTube Partner Program. So it's Partner Program Lite is what I like to think of it as, LITE. But there are a few things that we can do here, and so we're hoping to get to monetize this channel a little bit more. In the meantime, the only reason we do this is because of you. So thank you again for watching. If you've been watching the live stream all the way to the end, thank you very much. I have learned, by the way, and I'm going to the map. I am definitely going to the map because that is a different part of the state than I am in. So I'm going to the map to look up Clio Springs. And I'm also going to the map to look up Indy Atlantic. And look at that up in Florida. So go Bethel Wildcats, go Friends Falcons, and whoever else you are a fan of, go. By the way, if you're still watching this and you made it to the end of the broadcast and you're watching on the replay, you are a trooper. That means a lot too. So thanks for watching that. All right, we wrap it up here. Once again, our top 5 performers for the weekend: Duke McClinton, Brian Steinke, Andy Peters, John Schofield, Caden Cobb, Luke Giron, Jordan Wilmore, Devicius Wilson, and of course, Cavante Baker. Be watching tomorrow. We'll be back live again on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central. Thanks again for watching. God bless you all. Seriously, God bless you all. You guys have a great night.